The CEO received a waitress's mysterious note and left without explanation. Hours later, he returned and said something unexpected. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Mia Parker's days always began at dawn, when the first glow of the Boston skyline peeked through her modest apartment window. At 38, she had grown used to a life that revolved around quick showers, a strong cup of coffee, and bus rides to Tasting & Co., the cozy restaurant where she had worked for years. Though unassuming in size, her apartment was comfortable enough, a single-bedroom space adorned with second-hand furniture, colorful cushions, and the occasional psychology textbook she managed to collect over the years. She had long dreamed of studying the human mind in a formal program, yet finances and time always stood in her way. By 9 in the morning, Mia was already prepping tables, carefully placing utensils in meticulous rows, each fork and knife aligned with a precision that belied her gentle spirit. She approached this ritual with focused dedication, partly out of pride in her job and partly because the rhythm soothed her active mind. Her boss, Ray Johnson, a tall man in his 50s, would sometimes tease her. "You're arranging those spoons like you're preparing for a psychology experiment." Mia would laugh softly, but inside, she could never quite let go of the longing to do more than serve. By mid-afternoon, the restaurant buzzed with an eclectic mix of customers, tourists in casual outfits, business people rushing through power lunches, and a smattering of locals seeking comfort food. Mia floated between tables, greeting everyone with an earnest smile and a watchful eye. She had a knack for reading moods, a skill that fascinated her. On her best days, she felt she was peering through windows into people's hearts, noticing micro-expressions others overlooked. Her friend and co-worker, Emily Carter, marveled at Mia's intuition. "Sometimes, I think you know our customers better than they know themselves," Emily would say, marveling at how Mia seemed to spot a frown beneath even the most confident grin. Late afternoons were slower, with fewer patrons lingering for an early dinner. That was when Asher Hayes usually arrived. He was a man of 42, always in a perfectly tailored suit and polished shoes. He slipped into the same corner booth nightly, as predictable as clockwork. Despite his evident success, his phone incessantly buzzing with calls, his posture upright with a certain detached grace, Mia sensed a sadness in his eyes. The distant expression on his face, the slight crease of his brow, suggested an invisible weight he carried. They barely spoke beyond polite greetings and standard exchanges about the menu. Asher would request a quiet seat, place his order in a calm, measured tone, and check his watch often, as if each second weighed heavily. Mia wondered if he had family waiting or if, perhaps, those watch checks reflected a man who had nowhere else he wished to be. She recalled one evening when she offered him the dessert menu, and his eyes flickered with what looked like hesitation, almost longing, before he politely declined. The memory stayed with her, stirring a gentle curiosity she couldn't quite shake. After closing time, Mia often returned to her small apartment, removing her worn sneakers by the door and sinking into the couch with a sigh. Tonight was no different. She stared at a stack of psychology notes from an online forum she sometimes browsed. She thought about Asher, that haunted expression of his, and how success didn't necessarily shield people from loneliness. Her shift had ended as usual. She brought him the check, he paid swiftly with a terse nod and left. But his departure always felt heavier, as though he was escaping instead of simply leaving. Before drifting off to sleep, Mia replayed the day's events in her mind. She wondered what it would feel like to finally enroll in a proper psychology program, to learn how to help people, or at least understand them better. She mused over Asher's appearance at the restaurant, immaculately dressed, meticulously on time, yet emanating an air of silent despair. It occurred to her that, In their own distinct ways, both were hungry for something more. Under the quiet glow of her bedside lamp, Mia acknowledged the simplest truth. They were two strangers in different worlds, each looking through separate windows of solitude, longing, consciously or not, for someone to see them clearly. Mia's morning began like any other. A short bus ride through Boston's congested streets, a warm greeting from Ray Johnson at the restaurant door, and a polite wave to Emily, who was rolling silverware in neat bundles. Yet the moment she thought of Asher Hayes, her heart gave an odd flutter. She couldn't pinpoint why, but the memory of his distant gaze stayed with her. She tried to dismiss it as a passing curiosity, but the feeling lingered. Later that day, as lunch service wound down, Emily sidled up to Mia near the hostess stand. "Heard from the grapevine that Asher had a heated phone call in his car last night before coming in," she said in a hushed tone. "One of the busboys saw him looking furious. Then he just put on a polite face." Emily shrugged. "Maybe it's business trouble." Mia nodded, mind racing. "He never really shows emotion in here," she murmured, absently smoothing the tablecloth. "I sometimes think he's wearing a mask." She bit her lip, considering Emily's words. If Asher was under pressure, did that explain the weary look he carried like a permanent shadow? Evening crept in, and customers trickled through for dinner. Tasting & Co. bustled with the comforting clink of glassware and the murmur of conversation. Mia moved gracefully between tables, taking orders, refilling water glasses, and ensuring each guest felt seen. Asher arrived later than usual. His forehead was more creased than normal, and he barely acknowledged her greeting. A quick glance told her tonight something was different. He seemed more burdened, more withdrawn. Midway through his meal, Mia caught sight of him rubbing his temples. A pang of empathy shot through her. She heard Emily's voice in her ear. Maybe it's business trouble. But Mia sensed it went deeper than mere business. His shoulders slumped as though he carried far more than corporate worries. Each time she approached, he offered a polite word of thanks, but his eyes rarely met hers. When he finally asked for the check, Mia's hand trembled slightly. She hesitated by the register, heart thudding with an urgency she couldn't explain. She grabbed a pen and a small slip of paper meant for daily specials. Her fingers moved almost of their own accord. Before she could second-guess herself, she wrote 3 simple words. "Are you okay?" Breath catching in her throat, Mia slipped the note under the edge of the receipt. Instantly, doubt crashed over her. She had never intruded into a customer's personal life. Even with her caring nature, she'd always maintained professional boundaries. But now she was crossing a line. A wave of fear rushed in. Would Asher find this offensive or presumptuous? Would he complain to Ray? Yet something deeper told her it was the right move. She steadied herself, reminding her racing thoughts that compassion was worth the risk. She carried the check to Asher's table. As she placed it down, he glanced at her, exhaustion etched in every line of his face. "Thank you," he said softly, taking the black folder that held the bill. Mia retreated to the bar area, heart pounding. She tried to occupy herself by reorganizing the garnish station. She glimpsed Asher opening the folder, saw him pause. His eyes flicked to the note, then toward her. For a moment, she thought she saw vulnerability in his gaze, as though the words had reached him in a place even he didn't realize was raw. Then, without a word, he stood. He put some bills on the table and collected his coat. No complaint, no anger, but no acknowledgement either. Mia watched him go, her stomach twisting in knots. Emily sidled up, noticing her tension. "Mia, everything all right?" Mia swallowed hard. "I'm not sure," she whispered, eyes still on the door Asher had just exited. The note was out in the open now. Whatever would follow, she had pushed the first domino. Mia awakened the next morning with a knot of regret in her chest. She replayed last night's scene, the moment Asher read her note, his startled expression, and his abrupt exit. Had she overstepped? She pictured him complaining to Ray, or worse, deciding never to return. The restaurant prized professionalism above all, and a personal inquiry might be seen as crossing a boundary. By the time she reached Tasting and Co., her anxiety had doubled. Emily was in mid-conversation with Ray at the counter. At the sight of Mia, they exchanged knowing glances. "I was just telling Ray about Asher leaving in a hurry," Emily explained gently. "We're worried something might be wrong." Ray folded his arms, grey eyebrows knitting together. "Is there a chance you asked him something personal?" He sounded more curious than accusatory. Mia felt her cheeks burn. "I slipped a note in with his check," she admitted, voice trembling. "I asked if he was okay. He's here every night, but he always seems so alone." Ray exhaled slowly, as if weighing his words. "Mia, you have a big heart, but we have to be careful. I get that you meant well, but Asher is a high-profile client. If he complains—" "I know," she cut in, her tone apologetic. "I just couldn't help it. He looked so lost." Her eyes lowered. "I'm sorry if I caused any trouble." Ray tapped the countertop thoughtfully, then sighed. "Let's see if he shows up tonight. We'll handle whatever happens." Throughout the day, Mia's mind churned with uncertainty. Between serving tables, she found herself gazing at the entrance, half dreading, half hoping Asher would walk through it. He did not appear during lunch or dinner. Each hour that passed felt heavier, as though her spontaneous act had shattered a fragile balance. Emily tried to reassure her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Maybe he's just busy. CEOs have crazy schedules, right?" But Mia couldn't shake the sinking feeling that her question had been too intrusive. As the evening rush died down, Mia caught a reflection of herself in the window. Wide eyes, tense shoulders, her usually warm smile absent. In that moment, she saw a woman who cared deeply, but feared the consequences of that caring. She thought back to her old psychology notes scattered at home, remembering how empathy was always described as a bridge, not a barrier. Yet here, it felt like she had built a wall instead. Meanwhile, across town, in a sleek penthouse, Asher Hayes stared at his phone in silence. A corporate crisis demanded his attention. His board of directors was questioning quarterly projections, and tensions were high. But every time he tried to concentrate, his thoughts drifted to that note, "Are you okay?" The memory of Mia's earnest handwriting gnawed at him. No one ever really asked if he was all right, not in such a straightforward, caring way. For years, he had convinced himself that being okay was irrelevant, that results and performance were all that mattered. Now, he found himself unable to ignore the question. He tossed his phone onto the glass coffee table, frustration surging. The city lights twinkled through the massive windows, mocking his solitude. He could have filed Mia's note away as unprofessional or awkward, but instead, it felt personal, intimate, and he didn't know how to handle that. A wave of longing and fear washed over him. Back at Tasting and Co., Mia cleared plates and tidied the dining room for the night, each motion mechanical. A part of her wanted to apologize to Asher, to insist she'd never intrude again. Another part yearned to see him walk in so she could discover if he truly was okay. But the emptiness of his usual table spoke volumes. When her shift ended, Mia left feeling a deep ache of uncertainty. The words she'd scrawled had ricocheted into silence, leaving behind nothing but doubt. Doubt about her intentions, doubt about Asher's reaction, and doubt about whether she would ever see him again. A brisk wind swept down the Boston streets as Mia hurried to the restaurant the following morning. She clutched her jacket closer, her mind half focused on the swirling autumn leaves, half on the unsettled tension over Asher's absence. Stepping inside Tasting and Co., She found Emily setting up coffee cups and Ray huddled in the corner with the day's schedule. "Any sign of him?" Mia asked quietly, not needing to specify who she meant. Ray shook his head, and Emily managed a half-smile. "Let's see if today brings him in." The hours trickled by in a haze of orders, table checks, and routine chatter. Yet Mia couldn't fully concentrate. Her gaze darted to the door whenever it opened, only to sigh inwardly at each stranger who took a seat. Meanwhile, Asher was indeed dealing with problems, just not in the restaurant. In a glass-walled conference room at Hayes Investments, he stood before the board, facing a series of pointed questions about revenue forecasts. Mr. Wilcox, the principal shareholder, pinned him with a stern look. "Asher, we've always trusted your leadership," Wilcox said, "but we need to see you engage on a more personal level with both clients and employees. There's a sense you're too distant." The words stung Asher, mostly because they echoed Mia's unspoken observation. Distant. He was used to leading with a firm, impersonal approach, believing that strict boundaries kept a company efficient. Yet something about Wilcox's admonition and that elusive note from Mia chipped away at his defenses. Could it be that his self-imposed isolation was harming more than helping? Back at Tasting & Co., Mia trudged through the late afternoon slump, her muscles aching from constant motion, her brain weary from replaying worst-case scenarios. Emily, picking up on Mia's preoccupation, finally took her aside near the kitchen. "You can't keep torturing yourself over this," she said gently. "Asher might come back once he sorts out whatever's bothering him." Mia pressed her lips together. "I just don't want him to feel spied on or judged." She fiddled with the pen in her apron pocket. "What if he thinks I crossed a line and never returns? He's one of our most loyal customers." Emily gave her a comforting pat on the shoulder. "Loyalty like that doesn't evaporate overnight. If you touched a nerve, maybe it'll do him some good in the long run." During the dinner shift, the restaurant hummed with the usual clamor of plates and conversation. Yet Mia noticed a vacuum where Asher's presence was supposed to be. It was as though his absence cast a long shadow across the booths. She tried to focus on her other tables, a group of colleagues celebrating a promotion, an older couple sharing a quiet meal, and a lone business traveler typing furiously on a laptop. But the sense that something was missing gnawed at her. In his boardroom, Asher wrapped up an intense day of negotiations with potential investors. The tension in his shoulders hinted at the toll this was taking. Over and over, the same question from Mr. Wilcox echoed, "Are you truly connecting with anyone?" It rattled him. He recalled the last time he'd stepped into Tasting & Co., and the jolt he felt reading Mia's note. Maybe, he thought, her question threatened him because it was too close to the truth. He wasn't okay, not really. At closing time, Mia wiped tables with robotic efficiency. Emily flicked off the main lights, leaving only the soft glow of the bar. Ray approached, hands tucked in his pockets. "We'll be fine, Mia," he offered quietly. "Sometimes people disappear for a bit when life ramps up. It doesn't mean they're gone for good." Mia gave a small nod, though her chest still felt tight. As she stepped out onto the empty sidewalk, she glanced at her phone, half expecting to see a missed call or text from an unknown number. Nothing. She released a slow breath into the cold night air. Both she and Asher were under a storm of pressures, his from the corporate world, hers from her own heart. Neither had found a way to bridge the silence yet. And as the city light shimmered above, Mia could only hope tomorrow might bring a better way forward. Mia awoke to a streak of morning sunshine cutting across her bedroom floor. For a moment, she allowed herself the luxury of lying there, listening to distant car horns and the hum of a neighbor's television. She thought about her life, about her unresolved dream of studying psychology, about her job at Tasting and Co., and, inevitably, about Asher Hayes. The memory of slipping him that note wouldn't leave her mind. Neither would the ache of his prolonged absence. Rising from bed, she brewed a cup of coffee, inhaling its earthy aroma. She retrieved a notebook where she scribbled personal goals, flipping through pages of old aspirations, graduate school programs circled, quotes on empathy and mental health underlined. Somewhere in those notes lay the kernel of why she dared to ask Asher if he was okay. She had a gift for seeing when people were hurting, yet she always wondered if she was doing enough with that gift. At the restaurant, Mia arrived to find Ray and Emily engaged in the usual morning setup. Emily shot her a sympathetic glance, but neither said anything about Asher. Mia dove into her tasks, organizing the day's deliveries, double-checking table reservations, trying to distract herself. Around midday, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, a missed call from her mother. Her mum lived in a small town 2 hours away and often reminded Mia not to close herself off from opportunities. It was a well-intentioned but sometimes uncomfortable conversation. Mia made a mental note to call her back later, suspecting her mother would once again encourage her to keep her heart open. That evening, Tasting and Co. was unexpectedly calm, as if the city itself sensed everyone needed a breather. Mia found herself restocking napkins behind the bar, thinking about how to handle things if Asher ever returned. Would she apologize for the note, or would she stand by what she wrote, trusting that genuine concern shouldn't require an apology? Halfway through the dinner hour, Mia moved to check a table near the window. She paused, noticing the faint reflection of headlights outside. For an instant, she imagined Asher stepping from his sleek car, hesitating before walking in. She shook her head, brushing the thought away as if it were a daydream, but a quiet tug in her chest told her that maybe he was out there, deciding whether to cross the threshold again. Later, as she wiped a vacated table, Mia glanced up to see Emily standing by the door. Emily gave a subtle nod, eyes shining. Mia turned, heart stuttering, only to see an unmistakable silhouette. Asher stood at the entrance, eyes scanning the restaurant. He looked hesitant, as if torn between stepping forward or fleeing. Mia's pulse thundered in her ears. He walked toward her, each step deliberate, an unreadable expression on his face. She noticed subtle signs of stress, dark circles under his eyes, tension in his jaw, yet there was also a flicker of resolve, something that suggested he'd made a choice. He began, voice low. He cleared his throat. I'm sorry to drop by so late. Could we talk? Mia's mind whirled. She cast a quick glance toward the clock, which showed the restaurant closing in less than an hour. She exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Yes, she replied, her voice steady, even though her stomach was flipping. I'd like that. He pulled the collar of his coat closer, nodding. All right, let's wait until you're done. Mia signaled to Emily, who ushered the last few patrons out with a friendly goodbye. Ray, catching wind of the situation, slipped into the kitchen to give them space. The air felt thick with anticipation, yet for the first time in days, Mia sensed the heaviness in her chest lifting. She wasn't certain what Asher planned to say or how the night would unfold, but she knew this was the moment where both of them decided whether to keep hiding behind polite distance or take a bold step into uncharted territory. Mia arrived at Tasting and Co. the following morning with her mind still racing from the previous night. She and Asher had stayed late after closing, speaking in hushed tones at a corner table. Though it was hardly a grand declaration of friendship, it was the first time they'd both acknowledged a mutual desire to understand each other beyond waiter and customer. She replayed his words in her head, trying to parse their meaning. He'd confessed that her note had rattled him, made him question whether his isolation was truly sustainable. They hadn't resolved anything fully, but at least the conversation was honest. As Mia adjusted the salt and pepper shakers on each table, she noticed a familiar figure slip through the doors. Mrs. Jane Griffin, a regular customer who usually came in the mornings for a single cup of coffee and a muffin. 70 years old, with silver hair pinned back neatly, Mrs. Griffin radiated a quiet warmth. She had that gentle, knowing presence that made people feel safe, revealing their troubles. Mia liked her instantly from their first meeting months ago, and she often looked forward to the woman's visits. This morning, Mrs. Griffin beckoned Mia over before taking her seat. "Good morning, dear," she greeted, her voice calm and measured. "Could you bring me the usual, please? And if you have a moment, sit with me. I'd love to chat." Mia obliged, quickly returning with a ceramic mug and a fresh muffin. She took the seat across from Mrs. Griffin and offered a polite smile. "Anything special on your mind today?" Mrs. Griffin wrapped her hands around the mug as if cradling warmth. Her hazel eyes sparkled with a gentle curiosity. "I can't help but notice you seem distracted. Something's different about you lately." She paused, assessing Mia's expression. "You've always carried kindness in your eyes, but there's also worry now. Care to share?" For a moment, Mia debated how much to reveal, but something about Mrs. Griffin's sincerity disarmed her. "I've gotten close, well, not close exactly, but involved in a situation with a customer. He's a kind man, I think, but troubled. I wrote him a note asking if he was okay, and it stirred up a whole lot of confusion. Now I'm wondering if I overstepped." Mrs. Griffin took a slow sip of coffee. "True compassion can never be an overstep. Sometimes it's the spark that a person needs. Of course, it can also feel overwhelming if they're not ready to face their own struggles." Mia nodded, feeling a wave of relief. It was reassuring to hear someone confirm that caring wasn't a crime. "He came back last night," she ventured. "We talked, but I'm not sure where it's heading, and honestly, I'm worried about mixing personal empathy with my professional role. Is it foolish to keep reaching out?" Mrs. Griffin set her mug down. "My husband passed when I was in my early 50s. I was lost. One day, a neighbor who barely knew me showed up with a home-cooked meal and a note that said, 'I see you. You're not alone.' It felt intrusive at first, but her kindness brought me back from a dark place." Her gaze held Mia's. The heart knows when it's time to extend a hand. "You trusted your instincts?" Emboldened by this story, Mia felt her eyes prickle with tears she refused to shed in public. "I just don't want to hurt him or complicate things." Mrs. Griffin smiled sympathetically. "Life's complicated no matter what. Don't let fear of the unknown keep you from offering genuine care. You may be exactly the person he needs right now, and he might be who you need too, if you let it grow naturally." Mia thanked her quietly, a swirl of gratitude and newfound certainty filling her chest. Before rising from the table, Mrs. Griffin gave her hand a gentle pat. "And remember, dear, being kind isn't the same as forcing a relationship. Let him see he's not alone. Let the rest unfold as it may." The words echoed in Mia's mind the rest of the morning. She had been looking for a sign, some validation that her concern wasn't misguided. Now, thanks to Mrs. Griffin's wisdom, she felt prepared to face Asher again, ready to follow that inner compass, telling her it was worth taking another step into the unknown. That evening, Mia found herself inexplicably anxious, anticipating Asher's possible return. The restaurant was busy, with guests crowding the booths and waitstaff hustling between tables. Amid the gentle clamor, Mia's focus kept drifting toward the entrance, half expecting to see him there. The memory of their late-night chat still buzzed in her head. She recalled how his voice had trembled slightly when he admitted he wasn't sure how to talk about personal matters. An hour into the dinner rush, Emily waved Mia over, nodding discreetly toward the door. Mia's pulse skipped. There was Asher, lingering near the hostess stand, scanning the room for her. Their eyes met, and he approached with purposeful steps. Something about his expression, determined, almost resolute, suggested he'd made up his mind about something significant. "Evening," he murmured, voice low to avoid the ears of other customers. "Could we talk again? Maybe after you're done tonight?" His gaze flicked around, as though conscious of being recognized. Despite her nerves, Mia smiled. "Of course. Maybe we can find a quieter spot this time." Asher nodded, relief flickering across his face. He claimed his usual corner booth and placed an order for a light meal. Mia served him efficiently, but there was a shared undercurrent each time they exchanged a glance. It was as if both understood that, by the end of the night, they would step across some unspoken boundary between them. When closing time came, Ray announced last call to the few remaining patrons, and Emily herded them out with gentle persuasion. Mia's heart pounded as she brought Asher a cup of chamomile tea. He'd switched from his usual black coffee. "Less caffeine," he admitted with a faint smile. "I'm trying to calm down these days." She slid into the seat opposite him, the lights dimmed around them. In the hush that followed, she noticed how tired he looked, dark shadows under his eyes, tension in his shoulders. But there was also an openness there, a readiness to talk without the usual pretense. He inhaled, mustering courage. "You asked me if I was okay," he said quietly. "I avoided that question because, truthfully, I don't know. My life has been about hitting goals, meeting deadlines, pleasing shareholders. I never questioned whether I was happy. That note you wrote..." He paused, eyes meeting hers. "It broke something open in me." Mia listened intently, aware of every breath in the hushed restaurant. "Sometimes just knowing someone sees you can change things," she whispered. "You've seemed so alone, and I couldn't help but notice." A slight tremor crossed his lips, a mix of gratitude and vulnerability. "I'm not good at this, talking about feelings, but I also can't pretend it didn't happen." That note stuck with me. He leaned forward, voice more determined now. "I don't want to go back to the same old routine. That means I might need to step out of my comfort zone, and you're part of that change." Mia felt heat flood her cheeks. She wrapped her hands around her mug, searching for words. "I'm willing to see where this goes, but I also respect your boundaries. You're a CEO, I'm a waitress. Our worlds are different." He nodded firmly. "Which is exactly why we need to be careful. I have a board to answer to, and the media can be unforgiving. I'm not ashamed of talking with you, but I am concerned about how the rest of the world will react." Silence hung between them. Mia considered all the possible outcomes, rumors, misunderstandings at work, even her job security. Yet Mrs. Griffin's advice echoed in her mind. Sometimes the cost of caring was risk, but the reward could be meaningful connection. "All right," Mia said, meeting his gaze. "We'll be cautious, but I'm not going to pretend you don't matter either. If we need to talk, or just be there for each other, let's do it. I can't stand the thought of you facing everything alone anymore." He exhaled, a relieved smile forming. "Then let's do it, step by step. No big declarations, just honest conversation, and maybe friendship." She nodded slowly, a flutter of anticipation coursing through her. "Okay, let's try that." In that quiet corner booth, it felt like they'd both crossed a threshold. Two people from contrasting worlds decided in that moment that sometimes a single question, "Are you okay?" could spark a connection strong enough to challenge any boundary. 3 evenings later, Asher invited Mia to meet him at Tasting & Co. after the restaurant closed. He had insisted on a private setting again, unsure if he was ready to be seen with her in public. Though Mia felt a hint of disappointment at the secrecy, she understood that his corporate image was no small matter. Emily, ever supportive, simply winked at Mia at closing time, then discreetly busied herself in the back while Ray locked up. As the lights dimmed to a soft glow, Asher and Mia settled at a table near the window, the same spot they'd occupied days before. A gentle hush enveloped them, broken only by the faint hum of the restaurant's cooling system. Tonight, it was Asher who spoke first, as though steeling himself for a confession. "My father built Hayes Investments from the ground up," he began, voice subdued. "He was, let's just say, an old-school businessman. My mother left when I was young, so I grew up in a house that was big on discipline, short on warmth. I guess that shaped me into someone who believed that emotions had no place in the boardroom." He paused, fiddling with the napkin. "I rarely talk about this. It's just that note you gave me. It reminded me there's more to life than company profits." Mia watched him intently, her empathy filling the space between them. "I had no idea you felt alone. From the outside, you look so self-assured." He shook his head, managing a wry smile. "I've become good at playing that part, the successful CEO mask. But these past weeks, the board has been pressuring me for higher returns, and our top investor has been hinting that my leadership style is too cold, that it might hurt the company's long-term reputation." Mia's eyes softened. "Ironically, I think your willingness to be open, at least a little, might be what saves you in the end." He exhaled slowly, as though letting go of a burden. "What about you, Mia? I come here every night, and I see you working so hard. Emily told me once that you're interested in psychology." Her cheeks warmed, caught off guard that Asher had noticed. "It's just a dream I've had for years. College was never feasible financially, and I've been supporting myself since I was 18. I love my job, but I keep thinking maybe there's something else out there I'm meant to do, helping people, maybe in counseling or therapy. Sometimes I feel silly even saying it out loud." He reached across the table, resting his hand near hers without quite touching. "It doesn't sound silly at all. If anyone could do that kind of work, it's you. You have a gift for seeing people." Mia felt a lump in her throat. No one had ever validated her dream quite so directly. "I guess I'm good at reading body language," she admitted. "I grew up in a chaotic household. My dad was caring, but he struggled with anxiety, and my mom was juggling 2 jobs. I learned to pick up on unspoken tensions." Asher nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe that's why you could see right through me." A short laugh escaped her. "It's not that I see through you exactly. I just notice you're not as content as you appear." She glanced around the softly lit restaurant. "You know, for the first time in a while, I feel like I'm having a real conversation with someone who understands my own doubts and hopes." His voice quieted. "Me too. And it's strange, but comforting." They exchanged stories about growing up. Asher, in an imposing home with a father who valued achievement above affection. Mia, in a modest apartment with parents who tried their best but left her craving a sense of emotional security. As each revelation came, their connection deepened, built on raw honesty rather than superficial pleasantries. Eventually, the clock told them they'd stayed long past the usual hour. As they stood to part ways, Asher caught Mia's gaze. "Thank you," he said softly, "for seeing me as more than a headline or a paycheck. I'm starting to realize how much I needed that." She smiled, heart warm. "Likewise. It's good not to hide." And with that they headed out, each harboring the beginning of something far more significant than they dared voice aloud. The following day, Asher called Mia in the mid-afternoon, catching her by surprise. She had been in her cramped apartment, flipping through brochures for local community college courses. At first, she hesitated to answer, but curiosity won out. His voice was low and hurried, tinged with an edge of nerves. "Can we meet somewhere besides the restaurant? I'd like to talk about a plan, how we move forward." Mia's heart tumbled. "Sure," she said. "I know a small coffee shop in the North End. It's less crowded, quieter. We can talk without drawing too much attention." Early that evening, she found Asher seated in a corner of the modest cafe, wearing a neatly pressed suit that felt out of place among the casual crowd. Yet the moment she sat across from him, she noticed relief in his eyes, as though he was thankful for the anonymity. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I can't keep sneaking around after hours at Tasting & Co. Not if we want to actually build some sort of friendship. But I also can't have reporters catching us in high-profile spots. It would cause a frenzy. CEO seen with local waitress and all that." She nodded, understanding the gravity of his position. "I get it. It's not that I'm ashamed of who I am, but I don't want you to lose credibility at work." She wrapped her hands around her cup of tea, savoring its warmth. "We could meet here sometimes, or find other low-key places. We can keep it simple." He managed a tight smile. "I appreciate that. Honestly, I hate feeling like I have to hide, but my board is already on edge about the company's performance. Any scandal could make them wary of my leadership." They spent the next half hour mapping out a cautious arrangement. They'd text occasionally, meet at out-of-the-way spots, and save deeper conversations for moments they both felt safe. It wasn't exactly romantic. It felt more like a covert operation. Yet each time they locked eyes, Mia sensed the undercurrent of something genuine, an unspoken desire to truly know one another. "I'm not used to this," Asher murmured. "All these feelings. I've always walled myself off, but I want to try something different, even if it's not how people expect a CEO to act." Mia's lips curved in a reassuring smile. "This is uncharted territory for me too. But if we go slowly, maybe it won't be overwhelming. We can figure out how to be friends or whatever this is without letting the world tear it apart." They agreed to keep things discreet, at least for now. Mia insisted they be honest with Ray and Emily, who already suspected something was going on. Asher agreed it was smart to have allies who wouldn't misinterpret their connection as scandalous. The last thing he wanted was for rumors to filter back to the board without context. Finishing their drinks, they stepped outside into the crisp night air. Streetlights illuminated the cobblestone walkway, and the distant hum of tourists enjoying Italian restaurants reminded Mia of simpler times. Asher paused, glancing around as if he expected paparazzi at every turn. "No cameras here," she teased gently, stepping closer to him. "You can relax." A shy chuckle escaped him. "I'm sure I look paranoid. This is just new to me. But thank you." He exhaled, letting some tension leave his posture. "Thank you for understanding I can't just throw caution to the wind." Mia nodded. "We'll do what we have to. In the meantime, let's keep talking. I like the version of you that's relaxed and open." He looked at her then, a mixture of relief and gratitude shining in his eyes. He didn't speak, but the moment felt like a shared promise. They'd keep forging this unusual path, quiet coffee shops and careful phone calls, because something about their connection felt worth protecting. They parted ways, each returning to their separate lives. Mia walked home, heart light despite the complications, and Asher drove to his high-rise condo, resolved to approach the days ahead with a more human perspective. Whether or not the world was ready for this new side of him, he knew he could no longer hide it completely. Over the next week, Mia and Asher began to settle into a delicate rhythm. He continued to frequent Tasting & Co., but on some nights they'd slip off to a small cafe or even a tucked-away bookstore after her shift. Although caution dictated their choices, the time spent together felt liberating. One Wednesday afternoon, Mia received a text from Asher suggesting they meet at a local art gallery in Cambridge that hosted free admission every first Wednesday of the month. Intrigued, she agreed. She changed out of her waitress attire after work, slipping into comfortable jeans and a warm sweater, then hopped the T train across the river. The gallery turned out to be modest, featuring local artists. The lighting was soft, and only a handful of visitors quietly roamed the halls. Mia spotted Asher by a vibrant painting of the Boston skyline. He wore a casual jacket instead of his usual suit, looking more approachable than she'd ever seen him. "Never pegged you as an art guy," Mia teased, stepping beside him. "Is this a secret hobby of yours?" He offered a small grin. "I can't say I'm an aficionado, but sometimes looking at other people's creativity helps me clear my head, beats the usual boardroom vibes." They strolled through the gallery, pausing at pieces that caught their interest. For a brief moment, it felt like they were ordinary friends, unburdened by social or professional constraints. Mia admired a series of abstract paintings, enthralled by bold colors and swirling shapes. Asher, for his part, seemed content just watching her reactions. They chatted about trivial things, music tastes, favorite authors, realizing they had more in common than they initially assumed. Mia admitted she'd always loved classical jazz, a discovery that made Asher laugh. "I never would have guessed," he said, his tone playful. "I'm usually stuck with boardroom elevator music. Maybe I need to broaden my horizons." Eventually, they wandered into a small alcove where a temporary exhibit featured black and white photographs of everyday life in Boston. One photograph depicted an older couple sharing coffee at a tiny diner. Mia stopped in front of it, touched by the simple intimacy captured in the frame. "You okay?" Asher asked softly, noticing her pensive look. She nodded, lips curving into a gentle smile. "Yeah, it's just... I think about growing old and still finding companionship in small moments like that. It's comforting." Asher let the words sink in. "I can see why," he said, matching her gaze. "When you're young, you chase big goals and keep rushing around. But the older you get, the more you realize the quiet routines might be the most meaningful." His words stirred a warmth in Mia's chest. For a moment, she forgot the complexities of their arrangement. He was simply another human being longing for connection. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "I like that you're discovering these things," she admitted. "I mean, not just for me, for yourself. You deserve more than just relentless board meetings and lonely dinners." He gently squeezed her hand in acknowledgement before releasing it, mindful of who might be watching. The gesture felt sweet and deliberate, a silent confirmation of shared sentiment. They resumed exploring the gallery, finding moments to laugh at whimsical sculptures or remark on a clever painting. It was a reprieve from real life, a pause to breathe and, yes, to smile. Afterward, they stepped back into the crisp evening air. As they said their goodbyes, Mia felt a flutter of contentment. This encounter was unlike their previous, heavier conversations. Tonight, they'd focused on small joys, like glimpses of art and coffee shop banter, forging a sense of normalcy and lightness. "Thanks for coming," Asher said, his voice softer than usual. "I needed this." Mia nodded, a genuine smile playing on her lips. "Me too. It's nice to just be people without the rest of the world intruding." They parted ways on that note, heading off into the Cambridge night. Despite the secrecy, despite the pressure swirling in their separate worlds, they carried within them a renewed sense of hope that even in a life full of demands, brief pauses for genuine laughter and shared wonder could pave the way for deeper connections yet to come. About a week later, Mia walked into Tasting & Co. to start her evening shift when Emily hurried toward her, eyes wide. "You won't believe what I just saw online," Emily whispered, glancing around to ensure they were alone. "Someone snapped a photo of you and Asher leaving that bookstore last week. It's on a local gossip page, and people are commenting up a storm. Mia's stomach lurched. She hadn't noticed anyone that night. She and Asher had left the bookstore separately, a few minutes apart, to maintain discretion. Yet apparently, someone must have recognized Asher or spotted them talking inside. She pulled out her phone, heart pounding as she searched. Sure enough, there it was, a grainy image of her standing beside Asher on the sidewalk, with a caption reading, "Mysterious late-night companion for the Hayes Investments CEO." The post speculated whether she was a new girlfriend or merely a fling. Countless comments ranged from curious to downright cruel. Shakily, Mia glanced at Emily. "Did Ray see this yet?" Emily nodded, looking sympathetic. "He's in the office talking on the phone. I think he's trying to figure out how to handle any fallout." Before Mia could respond, Ray emerged, his normally calm features twisted in concern. "Mia, I'm sure you've seen it," he began, voice subdued. "I don't think it'll directly harm the restaurant, but we need to be prepared in case people start probing for details." Mia's head spun. "I never asked for this kind of attention," she mumbled, fingers gripping her phone. She dreaded what Asher's reaction might be. He'd been so cautious. This was precisely the sort of exposure he feared. She didn't have to wait long to find out. Less than an hour into her shift, her phone vibrated. It was a text from Asher. "We need to talk ASAP. I'm on my way." Panic welled inside her. She tried to focus on her tables, forcing a smile as she handed menus to a family of 4. But her mind buzzed with worst-case scenarios. Would Asher blame her? Would the board see this as scandalous? She had a sickening image of him storming in with accusations, though her rational mind knew that wasn't who he was. When Asher finally arrived, he was wearing a charcoal-grey suit, his face drawn tight. Mia felt her pulse hammer. She led him to a secluded corner, ignoring the curious glances from other patrons. "I'm sorry," she blurted, words tumbling out. "I didn't know anyone was taking pictures. I would have been more careful." He lifted a hand to stop her. "Don't apologize. None of this is your fault," he said, voice firm but laced with anxiety. "I'm frustrated, yes, but at the photographer or whoever posted it, not at you." Relief flooded her. Still, tension crackled in the air. "What do we do now?" she whispered, glancing around. He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes clouded. "We have to get ahead of this somehow. My phone's been blowing up. Board members, PR reps, they all want an explanation." Mia's chest constricted. "They must think I'm some opportunistic fling." His jaw tightened. "That's exactly what some tabloids are suggesting, that I'm dating a mere waitress." He exhaled, anger flashing in his eyes. "It's insulting, both to you and to me. You're not just some waitress, and they have no idea who you really are." Mia bit her lip, equal parts touched by his defense and terrified of the fallout. "This is the risk we talked about," she said softly. He nodded. "I know. And part of me wonders if we should distance ourselves for a while, until things blow over." Her heart clenched at the thought. She stared at him, searching his face. "Is that what you want?" His shoulders sagged. "I hate the idea, but the board is threatening to call a crisis meeting if we can't control the narrative." Silence hung thick between them. This was their first genuine obstacle, a sign that their connection wasn't just about warm conversations and quiet coffee shops. The world had intruded, and it threatened to tear them apart before they'd truly begun. Mia swallowed hard, determination flickering in her eyes. "We'll figure something out. We have to, because I don't want to lose this. Whatever it is we're building." A troubled look settled on Asher's face, but he reached for her hand briefly, giving it a gentle squeeze before letting go. "Me neither," he confessed. "Let's meet tonight, after you close. We'll decide how to handle it, together. They parted with a mutual resolve, yet the weight of the moment was undeniable. Their delicate bubble had burst, and what came next would force them to confront just how far they were willing to go to protect a connection that felt increasingly vital in both their lives. Mia arrived at Tasting & Co. the next morning, feeling equal parts nervous and defiant. The gossip blogs were still abuzz with images of her and Asher, and she braced herself for curious stares from regular customers. Sure enough, she caught hushed whispers near a window booth where two women were scrolling through their phones, sending pointed glances in her direction. She exhaled, smoothing her apron and willing herself not to appear rattled. By midday, curiosity had expanded beyond the occasional whisper. A few diners approached, not quite bold enough to demand details, but clearly fishing for information. "You have a famous customer, right?" one asked with a too-wide grin, while another inquired if she would be leaving her job now that she'd landed a CEO. Mia's polite smile never wavered, though each remark drove home how little people actually knew her. She had no intention of using Asher to leapfrog her life. She was proud of her work, proud of the empathy she'd honed in this very restaurant. Emily tried to intercept the worst of the gawkers, offering bright, if forced, greetings and guiding them to tables far from Mia's section. "You okay?" she murmured to Mia during a lull, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I know it's a lot." Mia nodded, appreciative but worn. "Part of me wants to disappear," she admitted, "but another part says I shouldn't hide just because people misunderstand." Throughout the day, she found pockets of kindness that made the scrutiny bearable. Mrs. Jane Griffin slipped in for her usual late-afternoon coffee. She waved Mia over with a knowing smile. "I've been following the headlines," she said gently, leaning in. "People are always eager to talk. But what matters is how you and Asher feel about each other, not the gossip." Mia breathed a sigh of relief, grateful for the unwavering support. She confided her worries, her exhaustion at defending a relationship that wasn't even fully defined yet. Mrs. Griffin nodded sympathetically. "Keep your heart steady," the older woman advised, "and remember, the ones who matter will see the truth." That evening, Asher dropped by quietly, taking a seat in the corner. The moment he entered, a hush fell over part of the dining room. Mia's stomach churned. She approached him, determined to project calm. "How was your day?" she asked softly. He glanced around at the watchful eyes. "Rough," he admitted under his breath. "The board demanded answers. My PR team asked if they should draft a statement. It's like everyone thinks this is some scandal." Mia gently placed a glass of water in front of him. "We're not doing anything wrong," she whispered. "We just have to weather the storm." They exchanged a look that spoke volumes, shared frustration, but also a tender solidarity. Her shift kept her from lingering, so they agreed to meet after closing. When at last the doors were locked, Asher and Mia gathered near the bar, Emily hovering protectively a few feet away, cleaning glasses. "I'm sorry you're caught in the crossfire," Asher told Mia, voice solemn. "The press is calling me aloof or foolish, depending on the angle, but they're being crueler to you." Mia swallowed. "It's okay. I have support here. Ray's been stern with customers crossing lines, and Emily's blocking the worst of it." She folded her arms, forcing a smile. "People make assumptions about our motives, but I'm not going anywhere." His eyes softened. "I don't deserve your loyalty, but I'm grateful for it." Emily cleared her throat, stepping closer. "You both need to know," she began. "A few folks were downright rude earlier. I told them to leave if they couldn't behave. Ray and I will keep doing that, but it might get worse before it gets better. Word travels fast around here." Mia exchanged a glance with Asher, that same fierce resolve lighting her eyes. "Then we face it head-on," she said firmly. "I'm not ashamed of caring for someone, no matter how different our lives look on paper." Asher nodded. "We'll stand together then. I'm done apologizing for wanting real connection. Emily smiled and offered each of them a brief hug. Good, she said, voice resolute. Because this place could use a reminder that genuine kindness still exists, and maybe your story will help others see that too. The next morning, Mia stepped off the bus in front of Hayes Investments, heart pounding so loudly she worried the security guard at the entrance would hear it. She had agreed to meet Asher here after he mentioned he wanted to show her his workplace. Their conversation the night before had ended on a hopeful note, but this felt like stepping onto a different planet, one where suits, polished floors, and hushed efficiency reigned. As she approached the sleek glass doors, Asher emerged from the lobby to greet her. He wore a crisp navy suit that exuded authority, yet his smile held warmth. "You found the place okay?" he asked, lightly touching her elbow in a half-greeting, half-reassurance. Mia mustered a grin, glancing around at the vaulted ceilings and the giant logo of Hayes Investments shimmering on the wall. "I feel like I'm in a movie scene," she admitted. "This is so different from my usual." Asher gave a soft chuckle. "It can be intimidating, but I'd like you to see what I deal with every day. Maybe then we can figure out how to navigate both worlds." He led her through a corridor of minimalist decor and subdued lighting. Sharp-dressed employees breezed by, each casting a curious glance in Mia's direction, some discreet, others openly astonished to see their CEO escorting a visitor in casual attire. She tried to ignore the prickling sense of being out of place, reminding herself that the differences in their backgrounds were part of what made their connection so unique. He paused outside a conference room, motioning for her to peek in. "That's where most board meetings happen," he said in a hushed tone. "Long table, stern faces, endless profit charts." A faint smile tugged at his mouth. "You'd probably diagnose the entire board with stress disorders if you could," Mia laughed quietly, the moment of levity easing some of her tension. "So many suits in one room might scare me off," she teased. Asher guided her toward his office on the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of Boston's skyline, and the space gleamed with modern furniture. Yet Mia couldn't help noticing how impersonal it felt, like a showroom rather than a place someone truly inhabited. There were no personal photos, no cozy touches that suggested a lived-in environment. "This is my domain," Asher said with a self-conscious shrug. "Or so they say, but you see how empty it actually is." Mia stepped toward the windows, awed by the panoramic cityscape. "It's beautiful," she said softly, "but it's also cold, almost lonely." He nodded, sliding his hands into his pockets. "Yeah, I never questioned it until you gave me that note. Now I realize I might have built myself a fortress, not a home." Before she could respond, a sharp knock sounded at the door. In walked Mr. Wilcox, the principal shareholder, wearing a tailored suit and a measured expression. His gaze flicked to Mia, then back to Asher. "I wasn't expecting a guest," he remarked politely, though the undertone was clear. He was assessing the situation. Asher cleared his throat. "Mr. Wilcox, this is Mia Parker. He hesitated, glancing at Mia. "We're working on a personal project together, related to employee well-being." Mia dipped her head in greeting, feeling Mr. Wilcox's scrutiny weigh on her. He offered a polite nod. "Ms. Parker, nice to meet you." Then he looked back at Asher. "I just wanted to drop by the updated projections. We'll need to review them before next week's meeting. You know how the board is on edge." With that, he placed a folder on Asher's desk and left, tension lingering in the air. Mia let out a slow breath. That was, something. Does he know about us? Asher rubbed his neck. "He suspects they all do. And while he hasn't said it outright, I'm sure some are questioning if this relationship might distract me." He paused, meeting her eyes. But seeing you here, I'm reminded why I can't just go back to that fortress. Despite her nerves, Mia felt a surge of confidence. Then we prove it doesn't distract you. We show them you can be human and successful. A ghost of a smile curved his lips. Exactly. We can't pretend we're the same, but we don't have to let those differences break us. If anything, maybe they can make us stronger. Still, as they gazed at the glossy surfaces and towering view, both felt the palpable weight of the chasm they'd need to bridge, one step at a time. The escalating business pressures hit Asher hard just 2 days after Mia's visit to his office. Rumors swirled of a significant drop in a major client's investment, sending the board into emergency sessions. Late-night phone calls and urgent meetings became Asher's new normal. He cancelled 2 evening plans with Mia without warning, leaving her anxious and alone at Tasting & Co. She understood the severity of the situation, but a small part of her still ached each time she received no reply to her messages. On the 3rd evening of Asher's abrupt unavailability, Mia sat in her dimly lit apartment, textbooks and college brochures spread across her coffee table. She tried to distract herself with potential class schedules, imagining a future in which she might become a counselor or social worker, but her thoughts strayed to Asher, where he was, what boardroom drama might be unfolding, and why he'd withdrawn so thoroughly. When her phone vibrated, she grabbed it expectantly, hoping for a text from him. Instead, it was Emily's number. Mia took a steadying breath, answering with a forced brightness. "Hey, Em. Mia, have you heard from him at all?" Emily asked, concern lacing her voice. "Ray asked me if you were okay because you seemed distracted tonight. Asher hasn't been by, and we're all worried." Mia closed her eyes. Nothing for days. "He's drowning in corporate crises, apparently." She paused, toying with the corner of a college brochure. "I'm trying not to take it personally, but it's tough." Emily offered a sympathetic murmur. "I know. Just remember he's not shutting you out because of anything you did. It's probably the board piling on the pressure." Mia hung up, feeling slightly comforted, but still unsettled. She decided to send Asher one last message for the night. "I hope you're safe. Let me know if you need anything." Then she set her phone aside, determined not to stare at it every 5 seconds. Across town, Asher sat in a cramped hotel conference room in New York, reviewing charts and proposals with his executive team. His tie felt like a noose around his neck, and his head pounded from lack of sleep. Every so often, he'd glance at his phone, see missed calls or unread texts from Mia, and feel a stab of guilt. He wanted to reply, to assure her he cared, yet each time he started to type, he was called back into urgent negotiations. The weight of saving the company overshadowed everything else. By midnight, his team dispersed to their respective rooms, but Asher remained behind at the conference table, half the lights dimmed. He finally retrieved his phone, seeing Mia's latest message. "I hope you're safe. Let me know if you need anything." A wave of longing swept over him. He wanted nothing more than to hear her voice, but exhaustion and anxiety paralyzed him. He powered down his phone instead, telling himself he'd call in the morning when he could speak coherently. The next day, Mia watched news updates reporting Hayes Investments' potential financial fallout. The commentators speculated about CEO Asher Hayes' leadership, analyzing his every move. One anchor hinted at recent personal distractions that might be pulling his focus away from stabilizing the company. Hearing that phrase sent a cold jolt through Mia's gut. Was she part of the problem, or was that just tabloid spin? Days bled into one another without any direct contact from Asher. Mia's worry morphed into self-doubt. She found herself replaying every conversation, every gesture, wondering if she'd allowed herself to believe in a connection that might never have the chance to flourish under the crushing demands of his corporate life. Even Emily's reassurances felt hollow when Mia faced the silence that greeted her calls and texts. By the end of that week, her anxiety manifested in sleepless nights and a gnawing dread that maybe Asher had chosen the company over her. It wasn't rational. She knew how dire the situation was, but her heart yearned for at least a sign he hadn't regretted letting her into his life. Yet, as the news cycle churned on and her phone stayed silent, the distance between them felt like an ever-widening chasm, threatening to engulf any fragile hope they'd built together. On a chilly Friday evening, Mia prepared to close Tasting & Co. in a subdued mood. The week had brought nothing but second-hand updates. Emily occasionally caught wind of corporate rumors, but none clarified Asher's state of mind. Mia's calls went unanswered, and his messages arrived sporadically, always short. Swamped, sorry. Crisis not over. Will explain later. She understood logically, yet her heart ached. The last few customers finished their desserts and trickled out. Ray locked the front door while Mia counted the register, her thoughts drifting. She no longer knew if she should feel betrayed or just deeply worried. Emily approached with a gentle tap on her shoulder. "You need a ride home?" Mia shook her head. "I'll take the bus. I could use the solitude." She forced a small smile. "Thanks, though." A minute later, there was a knock at the locked door. Startled, Ray turned to see who it was. Mia glanced over, and her breath caught. Asher stood outside, face drawn, hair slightly disheveled, wearing a dark coat against the biting cold. His eyes met hers through the glass with an almost desperate sincerity. Ray let him in quietly, and Asher stepped inside, exhaling a cloud of breath. The restaurant's dimmed lights cast soft shadows around them, and Mia's heart thundered. "You're here," she managed, voice trembling. I wasn't sure if—" He stepped closer, removing his gloves. "I'm so sorry," he said, voice laden with exhaustion. "Everything with the company has been chaos. We nearly lost a major client. I've been commuting between cities in non-stop talks. I should have called." Mia felt anger, relief, and concern all collide. "I get that you were busy, but I thought—" Her eyes flashed with hurt. "I thought maybe you'd decided it was too hard, too complicated." He shook his head, regret etched into his features. "No, it's not that. It was never that. I just didn't want you dragged into the madness. I was trying to solve everything first, then come to you." Emily and Ray retreated discreetly to the back, giving them privacy. Mia lowered her gaze, hands trembling slightly. "You have to understand how it felt from my side, after everything we talked about not shutting each other out. Then you go silent. It hurts." Asher inhaled, stepping closer. "I know, and I'm sorry. I handled it poorly. I was drowning, and I convinced myself that dealing with this alone was protecting you." His eyes pleaded for understanding. "But I realized that was a mistake." Silence stretched between them for a moment, the air thick with unspoken worries. Finally, Mia exhaled. "I believe you, but you have to trust me enough to let me be there for you, even if it's just a quick call to say you're alive." He nodded, relief flooding his expression. "That's fair. I promise. No more shutting you out." He paused, retrieving a small envelope from his coat pocket. "I wanted to bring you something. Not a bribe," he added quickly, "but a gesture." Mia opened the envelope to find an informational brochure for a local university's psychology program, along with a printed registration form. Her eyes widened. "You remembered I mentioned starting classes?" He mustered a hopeful smile. "We talk so much about me, my board issues, my crisis, but your dreams matter too. I looked into a few programs. This one has night courses and financial aid options. I thought maybe I could help with tuition if you... She cut him off gently, eyes brimming. Asher, you don't have to pay for my schooling. She blinked back tears. But it means a lot that you went to the trouble. He reached for her hand. You matter to me. I want you to believe that. We'll figure out the details, but for now, know I'm serious about supporting your goals. In that quiet moment, hope flared anew, like a tiny flame in a dark room. Mia pressed the envelope to her chest. They still had a long way to go. More obstacles lurking around every corner, but as she looked into Asher's weary eyes, she found a spark of reassurance that all was not lost. For now, a fragile strand of trust remained intact, enough to mend what the silence had broken. 2 days later, Mia was back at the restaurant, finishing her midday shift. She wiped down tables with a renewed energy, buoyed by Asher's recent attempt at reconciliation. They'd seen each other briefly over coffee that morning, a calm exchange that reminded Mia why she'd been drawn to him in the first place. His sincerity, his willingness to step out of his guarded persona, these things gave her faith that their connection could weather more storms. After lunch service wrapped, Ray approached with a cautious smile. Got a minute? There's something I want to run by you. He led her into the office, where Emily was already seated. We've been getting a lot of chatter about the restaurant because of your situation with Asher, Ray explained, hands folded on the desk. Some folks have taken an interest, for better or worse. Emily nodded, leaning forward. We were thinking, maybe we can harness that attention in a positive way. You mentioned wanting to help people, study psychology, all that. What if we hosted a small event focusing on mental health or community support with Tasting & Co. as the venue? Surprise brightened Mia's face. You mean like a benefit night? Awareness or fundraising? Exactly, Ray replied. It could help shift the narrative. Instead of gossip about a CEO and a waitress, we show the community that real connections can inspire meaningful action. If Asher's up for it, we could invite him to speak briefly, maybe introduce a partnership with a local charity. Mia's mind whirled. It was ambitious and definitely out of her comfort zone, but excitement stirred at the thought. You really think people would show up for something like that? Emily shrugged. We can't say for certain, but it might be a way to highlight the positive side of your story. Also, it's a chance for you and Asher to stand together publicly if you choose to. You'd reclaim control instead of letting tabloids do the talking. A flutter of nerves hit Mia's stomach, but she found herself nodding. I'll talk to Asher about it. Thank you. It means a lot that you both see this as an opportunity instead of just more drama. Ray smiled kindly. We care about you, Mia, and about this place. Let's turn the spotlight into something good. Later that day, Mia called Asher to share the idea. His initial hesitation was evident. He worried about the board's reaction, the shareholders, and the potential for negative press. But as she outlined Ray and Emily's vision, he grew quieter, listening intently. It's risky, he admitted finally, but also brilliant. If the public sees we're genuinely committed to something meaningful, it might soften some of the backlash. And it's consistent with the direction I've wanted for the company, more community engagement. The board's been asking for a more human approach. Ironically, Mia heard hope in his voice. So we do it, she asked, her heart pounding. He paused, then replied, Yes, I'll bring it up with my PR team and the board. If we position this carefully, we could help a local mental health charity and show people we're not just a scandalous headline. They agreed to meet that evening to hash out details. Mia spent the rest of the afternoon brainstorming ideas with Emily, scribbling potential themes and contacting small charities. She felt oddly exhilarated, as though she'd found a way to merge her desire to help others with the whirlwind around her personal life. By the time Asher arrived at Tasting & Co. that night, she had a makeshift proposal ready. They sat in a booth after closing, the overhead lights casting a warm glow. Mia's heart thrummed as she laid out her plans. Asher, still looking tired from corporate battles, nonetheless seemed animated by the concept. "If this works," he said, scanning her notes, "we could create a real difference in the conversation. Instead of people asking if I'm dating a waitress, maybe they'll ask about the cause we're supporting." Mia smiled, relief mingling with anticipation. "And it might help you show the board you can lead with empathy without sacrificing business results." He nodded. "We'll face objections, but I'm ready. Let's do it." In that moment, Mia sensed a shift. The two of them, once tentative strangers, now prepared to stand shoulder to shoulder in a bigger arena, ready to confront corporate scrutiny, media speculation, and societal judgments. Their personal struggles hadn't vanished, but they were armed with renewed determination. They discovered that while caring for each other was complicated, it also had the power to forge something meaningful for themselves and for those who might need hope just as badly. The night of the benefit event arrived faster than Mia or Asher anticipated. Tasting & Co. had been transformed into a warm, inviting space adorned with soft lights, modest flower arrangements, and informational booths about mental health services. Ray moved from table to table, overseeing final details, while Emily fussed over seating charts. The cozy restaurant that once served as the background to Mia and Asher's cautious conversations now stood at the center of a potentially game-changing evening. Mia paced near the entrance, clutching a clipboard and checking her phone. With each new arrival, members of the local press, curious patrons, and even a handful of city officials, her pulse quickened. She had never planned an event of this scope. The thought of speaking publicly before strangers, including local reporters, made her stomach flip. But she kept reminding herself of the goal, to shift the public narrative away from scandal and towards something positive. "Hey, you all right?" Emily approached with a gentle nudge. She wore a simple black dress, her expression equal parts excitement and worry. Mia forced a smile. "Ask me again in an hour," she joked. "Have you seen Asher?" "He said he'd be here early, but..." The restaurant doors swung open, and in walked Asher Hayes, flanked by two PR reps wearing serious expressions. He looked striking in a tailored suit, yet his face appeared tense. Spotting Mia, he excused himself from the aides and strode over. "Sorry," he murmured, taking her hand briefly. "The board insisted on a last-minute meeting about how I'll handle the press." He made air quotes, rolling his eyes. She squeezed his hand, grateful he'd shown up at all. "We'll be okay," she said softly, though her heart still hammered. "The plan is just to speak from the heart, right?" He nodded, releasing a tight breath. "Right. Keep it genuine. We'll talk about the importance of mental health and supportive communities, not tabloids or personal drama." He glanced around at the modest crowd gathering. "I still can't believe you and Ray pulled this off in record time. Desperation fuels creativity, I guess," she replied with a wry grin, though anxiety shimmered beneath her words. Gradually, the restaurant filled with guests, many of whom Mia recognized as longtime patrons. A few board members from Hayes Investments arrived, scanning the scene with measured curiosity. Mr. Wilcox stood by the bar, sipping water and periodically making notes on a small pad. Every so often, he'd flick his gaze toward Asher, as though assessing how the evening might unfold. With all eyes on them, Mia and Asher opened the program together. A hush settled as the overhead lights dimmed slightly, highlighting a small platform near the front. Mia cleared her throat, nerves prickling. "Good evening," she began, voice quivering at first. "Welcome to Tasting & Co.'s first community benefit night." We're raising awareness and support for local mental health initiatives. This is important to all of us. You never know who might be struggling in silence." She paused, scanning the room. Her gaze landed on Asher, who stood poised at her side. Drawing courage from his presence, she continued, "I'm not a public speaker by trade. I'm just someone who believes small acts of kindness can change lives. We hope tonight will remind everyone that empathy and understanding matter." Applause broke out, more enthusiastic than she expected. Asher stepped forward, greeting the room with measured composure. "At Hayes Investments, we often talk about growth and success," he said, "but none of that means much if we lose sight of our humanity. I've recently learned that reaching out, asking if someone's okay, can change a person's entire outlook." He caught Mia's eye, momentarily letting the personal nature of his words resonate. The audience included reporters capturing every syllable, but Asher pressed on with genuine conviction. "This event isn't about me or even about us. It's about recognizing that mental and emotional health is a shared responsibility. We all play a role in supporting one another." A current of energy pulsed through the crowd, a sense that something genuine was unfolding. Mia scanned their faces, spotting both curiosity and cautious optimism. For the first time since the media frenzy began, she felt hope that their story might inspire more empathy than scandal. Yet the night was young, and the ultimate reactions of the board and the press remained uncertain. For now, they had taken the stage, ready to confront whatever came next with hearts firmly aligned in a common purpose. As the formal portion of the evening progressed, guests mingled among the information tables, where local mental health organizations distributed pamphlets and answered questions. The atmosphere glowed with a cautious optimism. Mia darted between clusters of attendees, making introductions and ensuring the volunteers had everything they needed. She couldn't shake the nerves pooling in her stomach, yet seeing the genuine interest on people's faces buoyed her spirits. Meanwhile, Asher found himself surrounded by curious onlookers, some well-intentioned, others more skeptical. A few investors asked pointed questions about why he was focusing on charity work instead of purely on profits. He responded patiently, explaining that philanthropic outreach could boost the company's public image and morale. Still, not everyone appeared convinced. In a corner by the dessert station, Mia crossed paths with Mr. Wilcox. He studied her for a moment, sipping from a glass of sparkling water. "Miss Parker," he said, voice surprisingly polite, "you've organized quite an event here. Must have taken a great deal of effort and coordination." She nodded, bracing herself for a critique. "It did, yes, but we had a lot of support from the restaurant staff and local groups. I'm just grateful people showed up." He glanced around, observing the lively pockets of conversation. "I can see the potential. I won't lie. I've had reservations about Asher's choices, but seeing the positive energy here, I'm open to the idea that a more personal approach might benefit the company." His eyes returned to Mia. "Assuming the press coverage remains favorable, of course." An unfamiliar hope flickered in her chest. "I believe it will." "Thank you for giving it a chance." Before she could say more, she heard a commotion near the entryway. Turning, she spotted a small group of reporters converging around Asher, peppering him with questions that seemed to grow louder by the second. Mia's heart skipped. The word romance drifted above the din, and she caught glimpses of cameras flashing. Sensing the situation, Emily quickly tried to redirect the crowd, urging them to save personal questions for another time. But the reporters persisted. Mia felt her pulse quicken, uncertain whether to rush over or keep a distance. Asher maintained his composure, though tension tightened his jaw. One reporter finally blurted, "Is it true you've been fraternizing with a waitress from this very restaurant? Don't you think that undermines your corporate responsibilities?" Mia's cheeks burned. She half expected Asher to dodge the question, to revert to the strategic deflection he used in board meetings. Instead, he took a measured breath. That waitress you're talking about is Mia Parker, an intelligent, compassionate person who's co-organized this event to help our community. If you're implying she's less worthy because of her job title, I'd suggest you re-evaluate your assumptions. The reporter pressed on, undeterred. So, you are confirming a personal relationship? A hush fell over the immediate vicinity, curious ears tuning in. Mia watched Asher weigh his words. I'm confirming that I value Mia Parker not just as a co-organizer or a friend, but as someone who helped me see the importance of empathy and leadership. Where that friendship goes is our business, but it doesn't diminish my capacity as CEO. If anything, it's broadened my perspective. A low murmur spread. Some guests seemed impressed, others perhaps skeptical. Mia felt equal parts exposed and proud. She stepped forward, clearing her throat. We're here tonight to support mental health resources. Asher and I felt that cause deserved attention. If anyone here questions whether a personal connection disqualifies us from caring, that's a reflection on society's biases, not on our intentions. Tense silence followed, broken only when a volunteer from a local charity began sharing success stories at the mic. The reporters slowly dissipated, cameras flashing a few final times. Mia exhaled, heart hammering. She could still feel stares, but a measure of respect lit certain faces. Asher reached for her hand, squeezing it briefly before letting go to avoid further spectacle. You okay? He whispered. Her chest tightened with lingering adrenaline. A little rattled, she admitted, but I think it needed to be said. He nodded, lips curving into a faint smile. I'm proud of you. And if the board needed a sign I'm serious about this new direction, I think they just got one. They stood there, center stage in a swirl of public intrigue, hearts on display for everyone to see. Though the wounds of scrutiny ran deep, in that moment, neither doubted they were on the right path together. By the halfway point of the benefit, a surprising sense of warmth had settled over Tasting and Co. Despite the tense run-in with reporters, the mood among most attendees was uplifting. Live acoustic music played softly in the background, and small plates of hors d'oeuvres circulated. Ray and Emily bustled about, ensuring no glass went empty and no volunteer felt overlooked. A representative from a local mental health non-profit took the microphone to share personal stories, detailing how community support had saved countless lives. Mia watched from the side, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. She noticed Asher standing nearby, listening with solemn attention. Every so often, their gazes met, reaffirming that what they'd undertaken was worth the tension and risk. After the talk concluded, people applauded enthusiastically, some stepping forward to sign up as volunteers or donate. Mia couldn't help but smile, a swell of pride rising in her chest. This was the tangible impact she'd always dreamed of making, offering hope and resources to those in need, bridging gaps between isolated individuals and compassionate communities. In a quieter moment, Asher guided Mia toward a small table tucked near the back. They sat down with cups of herbal tea, taking a brief respite from the bustling main floor. I've been thinking a lot about the employees at Hayes Investments, he said, keeping his voice low. They work long hours under enormous stress. It's normal in the corporate world, but maybe it doesn't have to be. Mia leaned in, sipping her tea. You want to bring some of this, what we're doing tonight, back to your company? He nodded, a flicker of enthusiasm brightening his tired eyes. Yeah, mental health days, counseling options, flexible schedules, something more humane. If the board sees how well we're doing here, maybe they'll agree. Her heart warmed at the idea. That's a big step. You think they'll support it? He ran a hand through his neatly styled hair, a small sign of nerves. "I'm not sure, but the board and I are overdue for a serious conversation. This event shows there's real public interest in mental well-being. It might be the leverage I need." Before Mia could respond, a soft voice interrupted. "Mind if I join you?" Mrs. Jane Griffin stood by their table, wearing a gentle smile. Mia welcomed her to sit, noticing how she carried herself with quiet grace. Mrs. Griffin turned to Asher first. "I wanted to thank you for your words earlier," she said. "I heard how you stood up for Mia. That took courage." Asher inclined his head. "It felt like the right thing to do," he replied honestly. Turning to Mia, Mrs. Griffin clasped her hands. "You're blossoming, dear. When you first mentioned your dreams of helping people, I suspected you had the heart for it. Tonight, I see the proof. You've planted seeds of hope here." Mia felt her cheeks flush. "Thank you. Sometimes it still feels unreal, like I'm stumbling through, hoping not to fall on my face." The older woman's eyes sparkled. "That's how new growth works. Tiny roots push through concrete, and one day you see a flower peeking out in the unlikeliest place." Asher reached for Mia's hand beneath the table, giving it a soft squeeze. She returned the gentle pressure, grateful for the validation from someone she admired. In that moment, a flower growing through concrete seemed like the perfect metaphor for all they'd faced. The skepticism, the harsh press coverage, the looming corporate tensions. Yet here they were, forging ahead with determination and heart. A sudden burst of applause erupted from the main room, prompting them to turn and see volunteers showing newly tallied donation numbers on a large whiteboard. The sums raised exceeded their initial goal, and a wave of excitement rippled through the crowd. Mia rose from the table, her heart pounding with joy as she took in the sight of community members cheering, hugging, and celebrating the collective effort. Asher stood beside her, gazing at the board with a mixture of relief and inspiration. For the first time since this whirlwind began, she saw a genuine lightness in his face, unburdened by corporate stoicism. Stepping forward, Mia let out a quiet laugh. They had created this event under tense circumstances, yet it was now yielding something undeniably beautiful. If a bloom could break through city concrete, maybe they could overcome all the obstacles ahead, too, one heartfelt step at a time. In the wake of the benefit's success, conversations buzzed throughout Boston's corporate circles. Attendees praised Asher's speech, and word spread that Hayes Investments might be entering a new era, one that balanced profitability with genuine care for employees and the community. Public opinion shifted slightly, transforming Mia and Asher's connection from a mere curiosity to an example of empathy in action. But not everyone was enthusiastic. Behind closed doors, a few board members grumbled about the direction Asher seemed to be steering the company, although Mr. Wilcox himself was warming up to a more personable leadership style. Others suspected Asher's focus on mental health and well-being could be a distraction from quarterly growth. Whispers of discontent circulated, hinting at a possible internal push to clip Asher's authority if profits dipped even slightly. Mia caught wind of this from an unlikely source, one of Asher's assistants, who frequented Tasting & Co. for lunch. The assistant mentioned hearing talk of a confidence vote that might be raised at the next board meeting if certain members felt Asher was too absorbed in personal projects. Alarmed, Mia relayed the intel to Asher, who listened with furrowed brows. "It's not a complete surprise," he admitted, pacing around the living area of Mia's apartment. He'd started visiting her place in the evenings, finding it more inviting than his sterile condo. "Change always meets resistance. Some board members are from my father's era, fiercely traditional. They see empathy as weakness." Mia frowned, setting aside her psychology notes. "Can you sway them before it comes to a vote?" He paused by the window, gazing at the traffic outside. I'm working on a proposal for new workplace policies, flex schedules, in-house counseling, a thorough plan that's financially sound. If I can show them how it aligns with boosting employee loyalty and productivity, maybe they'll see it's a sensible investment. She rose, crossing the small space to rest a hand on his arm. I believe you can do it. Just make sure you're not fighting alone. A moment of vulnerability flickered in his eyes. I won't shut you out again, I promise. Despite the fear gnawing at them, they set aside a few hours each evening to refine the proposal. Mia offered insights from her limited but passionate perspective, how employee well-being programs could reduce burnout, lower turnover, and improve company culture. Asher meshed those ideas with financial data, building a thorough presentation. Occasionally, she glimpsed the tension in his jaw, the weight of needing to satisfy a board that might be plotting against him. Meanwhile, Ray and Emily at Tasting & Co. noticed the shift in Mia's demeanor, her excitement tinged with worry. Don't let them grind you down, Emily advised one afternoon, handing Mia a fresh batch of coffee filters. You and Asher are doing something good. These big corporations might take time to catch up. Mia mustered a thankful smile. At least we're facing it head-on together. I'm just worried what happens if the board actually calls that vote. His position could be at risk. Emily arched a brow. Would he really lose his job over caring for people? That's messed up. Mia nodded grimly. Welcome to corporate America, she said, half joking, half serious. Tensions escalated when an anonymous rumor landed in a business column, claiming Asher's personal life was causing significant internal friction. The article hinted that a motion to replace him might surface if earnings didn't hit targets next quarter. To Mia, it reeked of behind-the-scenes scheming by individuals determined to maintain the old guard mentality. Reading the piece late one night, Asher shook his head in exasperation. They're ramping up pressure. But if we can prove the new direction is working, especially with the positive PR from the benefit, maybe that rumor won't gain traction. Mia slid an arm around his shoulders. We'll show them progress. People are more than numbers. He leaned into her touch. Yes, and we'll keep forging ahead. I won't let fear of a few conspirators derail what we're building, for the company or for us. As the city lights glimmered outside, they shared a moment of determined calm. In less than a week, Asher would face the board again, armed with data and a vision shaped by their shared belief in empathy. Whether or not those entrenched in corporate tradition would listen remained to be seen, but they both knew the stakes had never been higher. On the morning of the critical board meeting, Asher stood before his bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie with steady hands. He glanced at his reflection, eyes tinged with fatigue but holding a new resolve. Across the living room, Mia sat at his dining table, scanning the final version of his proposal. She, too, felt the weight of the day. Though she wouldn't be in that boardroom, her heart was right there with him. Before he left, Asher crossed the room and cupped Mia's cheek gently. Thank you, he said, for all your help, your patience, and for believing in this. Whatever happens, I'm grateful. She rose, pressing her forehead lightly to his. Go show them what real leadership looks like. I'll be here, rooting for you. The board convened in a large glass conference room high above the city. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, Boston sprawled like a testament to ambition. Asher scanned the faces around the table, some allies, some skeptics, and a few who seemed outright opposed to any shift in company culture. Mr. Wilcox sat at one end, hands folded, expression inscrutable. Clearing his throat, Asher began with a recap of Hayes Investments' financial status. He highlighted stable revenue streams and forecasted growth. Then, he transitioned into the crux of his presentation, a structured plan for bolstering mental health resources, flexible work arrangements, and improved employee engagement. Each slide showed not just cost, but potential long-term returns, lower turnover, reduced burnout, higher morale, and the positive brand image that had already begun forming around his leadership. As the plan unfolded, murmurs filled the room. Some board members scribbled notes, others exchanged skeptical glances. Asher pressed on, referencing the success of the Tasting & Co.'s charity event. He cited articles where journalists lauded Hayes Investments for supporting mental health initiatives, flipping the narrative from scandal to social responsibility. Finally, he addressed the elephant in the room. The rumors. "I know there have been whispers that my personal life is a distraction," he said, voice firm. "But if you look at the data and our recent public reception, you'll see the opposite is true. We've generated positive buzz, showing we're a forward-thinking corporation with a heart. That's not weakness, it's innovation in a competitive market." Silence reigned when he finished. The board members sifted through papers, a few tossed pointed questions. How can we be sure this isn't a passing trend? What if the cost of these benefits cuts into short-term profits? Asher answered methodically, emphasizing that investing in people is always a strategic move. Gradually, the tension eased. At last, Mr. Wilcox cleared his throat. "We've heard your proposal, Asher. Now we need to decide whether to proceed with a formal vote of confidence in your leadership." He scanned the room. "Shall we put it to a vote?" A ripple of anticipation filled the air. Some members exchanged cautious nods. One by one, they raised their hands to support Asher's leadership or to oppose it. With each vote in favor, Asher's chest loosened a fraction. The tension threatened to snap when two members abstained, refusing to take a definitive stance. But in the end, a clear majority sided with Asher, endorsing him to implement the new policies. Breath whooshed from his lungs. Applause was minimal. This was a boardroom after all, but the relief was palpable. Mr. Wilcox stood, extending a handshake. "You've convinced us to take this step, Asher. Let's hope it pays off for the employees and the bottom line." Once the meeting adjourned, Asher retreated to his office, hands shaking from adrenaline. He texted Mia, "We did it. They approved the plan. Heading home soon. Can't wait to tell you everything." Mia, who had spent the morning in quiet suspense at Tasting & Co., felt tears of joy spring to her eyes when she read his message. She relayed the news to Emily and Ray, who erupted in cheers, quickly sharing the victory with the kitchen staff. The sense of triumph swept through the restaurant like a warm breeze. Their story had gone from an unexpected connection to a beacon of hope, showing that empathy and ambition could coexist. That evening, Asher returned to Mia's apartment with takeout in hand and exhaustion etched into his features. Yet his smile shone with genuine pride. "They said yes," he repeated, as though still marveling at it. Mia threw her arms around him, laughter mixing with relief. All that work, worth every second. In that embrace, they sealed a new chapter, a hard-won victory that underscored the power of authenticity. No longer just a CEO's fling or a waitress's bold gesture. Their story had morphed into a real-life testament that one simple question, "Are you okay?" could unravel barriers and inspire an entire corporation to open its eyes to a more human way of succeeding. A crisp autumn sun lit the Boston streets as Mia threw open the restaurant door, greeted by the comforting clang of pots and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. It had been a few days since the board granted Asher full approval to implement the new employee wellness plan, and the collective mood felt electric with possibilities. News of the board's decision spread swiftly among Hayes' investment staff, stirring cautious optimism about upcoming changes. At Tasting & Co., the staff also buzzed with excitement. Emily was already at a corner table, finalizing the morning's supply lists. She beckoned Mia over. "Heard from Asher yet today?" she asked, a twinkle in her eye. "Word is, he's been swamped with interviews now that people see him as a visionary CEO." Mia laughed softly. I texted him an hour ago. He said he'd swing by later, if he can sneak away from the cameras. It felt surreal that the man once hounded by tabloids was now being praised as a pioneer for more humane workplace policies. She recalled how they'd started this odyssey with a simple note she left on his check, "Are you okay?" and how that single question had altered both their lives. They turned at the sound of the front door opening. Mrs. Jane Griffin appeared, gliding in with her usual composed elegance. She smiled at Mia, taking off her scarf. "Good morning, dear. Any chance I could get my favorite blueberry muffin and a chat?" Mia escorted her to a booth. As she settled the older woman in, Mrs. Griffin cast a keen glance around the bustling space. "The atmosphere is different. There's an undercurrent of hope here," she remarked. Mia nodded, taking a seat beside her. "We've all gone through a lot recently. Our little restaurant, Asher's company. It's like everyone realized we can do more when we work together." Mrs. Griffin patted her hand. "That's the beauty of it, child. Sometimes heartbreak or conflict paves the way for new beginnings. I see it in your eyes. You're more confident now." Mia felt warmth spread through her chest. It was true. All the trials, the gossip, the board intrigue, Asher's corporate battles had tempered her. She no longer questioned whether she had a right to dream big or to care about people in powerful positions. She had discovered that empathy could span any divide if nurtured with honesty. Later that afternoon, Mia was double-checking the reservation ledger when the door swung open. Asher stood there, scanning the room with a grin that reached his eyes. He wore a sleek suit, but there was a casual looseness in his posture that hinted at a newfound ease. A few patrons recognized him, but the reaction was notably warmer now, enthusiastic waves instead of hushed whispers. He crossed the room to Mia, leaning in. "Hope I'm not interrupting your flow," he said, lightly teasing. "I got a short break between interviews and wanted to see if you could join me for an early dinner." She laughed, color flushing her cheeks. "I think I can manage that. Let me just check if Ray can spare me." A few minutes later, they stepped outside into the late afternoon sunshine, strolling down the sidewalk with no obvious need to hide. Asher guided her to a modest bistro around the corner, ignoring the curious glances from passers-by. They settled into a corner table, the overhead light casting a soft glow across the simple decor. Asher ran a hand through his hair. "I've been bombarded with questions about the new plan. Some ask if it's all a PR stunt, but I keep telling them it came from personal revelations. That empathy in leadership can't be faked forever." Mia nodded. "I've seen enough of the corporate world's cynicism to know they'll need proof, but you're giving them that with real policies, right?" He leaned in, eyes alight. "Yes. We've already designated an employee wellness budget, hired a part-time counselor, and begun adjusting schedules for parents who need flexibility. The board is on board, pun intended." His grin widened. "And I owe part of this to you. Your vision, your sincerity, those things changed me." Mia felt her heart skip. She remembered how uncertain they both were just weeks ago, unsure if they could bridge their worlds. Yet, here they were, planning a future that merged corporate pragmatism with heartfelt compassion. The sun dipped lower outside the bistro window, throwing long shadows across the table, but neither seemed to notice. They had stepped into a brighter horizon, one where the lines between CEO and waitress blurred, giving way to two people who simply chose to care. Over the following week, life for Mia and Asher settled into a rhythm that felt both remarkable and strikingly ordinary. Each morning, Mia arose early in her modest apartment, slipping on her comfortable shoes and catching the bus to Tasting & Co. She still served tables with the same diligence, but an undercurrent of excitement threaded through her days, especially when she took short breaks to review college enrollment forms or answer Asher's occasional texts. Meanwhile, Asher navigated the swirl of corporate demands with a new approach. He delegated more, held open-door sessions for employees needing to discuss workload pressures, and integrated feedback from the newly hired counselor. To his surprise, the staff responded with heightened morale. His once intimidated administrative team grew more open and collaborative, reflecting the shift in leadership style. One Saturday afternoon, Asher finished a round of meetings and decided on a whim to visit Tasting & Co., unannounced. He walked in around the lunch rush, scanning the familiar interior. The place was almost full, lively chatter blending with the clink of silverware. Mia, balancing a tray of drinks, lit up at the sight of him. She motioned that she'd be free in a moment. He found an empty seat at the bar, soaking in the restaurant's buzz. Ray greeted him warmly, wiping glasses with brisk efficiency. "Haven't seen you in a while around lunchtime," Ray said with a small grin. "Working too hard?" Asher chuckled. "Trying not to, actually. You know, practicing what I preach about work-life balance." Ray's features softened. "Glad to hear it." He set down the glass and offered a quiet nod. "Mia's been happier, too. She's even talking about juggling part-time classes soon." Asher felt a flicker of pride, remembering how he'd researched local programs for her. "She mentioned possibly starting next semester. That's really great." Ray shrugged, though his eyes shone with genuine affection. "She's always had a knack for understanding people's emotions. It's good to see her taking steps to formalize that." Mia joined them a moment later, tray perched on the bar. "Hey, stranger," she teased Asher, though her smile was more genuine than ever. "What brings you here this time of day?" He leaned forward. "I had a gap in my schedule and wanted to see if you could take a short break. Maybe we can chat about that dinner plan for my employees next week, the one we're calling a team bonding event." With Ray's nod of approval, Mia lifted the bar flap and guided Asher to a small booth near the back. Though only a few months had passed since their first cautious conversations, the contrast felt stark. Where once they'd hidden after hours, now they talked openly among staff and patrons who eyed them with friendly curiosity rather than scandalized whispers. "So," Asher began, sliding a small notepad across the table, "I've jotted down some ideas for the employee event. I was hoping to include an icebreaker that encourages them to discuss non-work interests. Maybe a short segment on stress reduction techniques." Mia scanned his notes, a grin forming. "This is good. I could see if any local mental health advocates are willing to do a brief workshop too." He nodded eagerly. "Great. Let's finalize details tomorrow." They continued brainstorming until Mia's next table beckoned. As she stood to return to work, Asher reached out, lightly touching her wrist. "Thanks for always being my sounding board." She shrugged playfully. "I'm invested in your success, obviously." Then her smile turned softer. "But mostly, I'm happy you're finding balance between who the board wants you to be and who you really are." He absorbed her words with a silent gratitude. Once she rejoined her section, he lingered at the booth, reflecting on how far they'd come. Gone was the brittle formality that once defined his evenings, replaced by a sense of normalcy laced with genuine warmth. He'd never imagined a future where he could walk into a modest restaurant at midday and feel more at home than in a high-rise office. Eventually, Asher said his goodbyes, leaving Mia to her bustling tables. Strolling out into the afternoon sunlight, he felt an unfamiliar yet welcome ease in his shoulders. Their return to a routine didn't mean life was dull, quite the contrary. The everyday tasks and conversations brimmed with purpose and comfort, a reminder that sometimes extraordinary transformations find their real power in the small, steady rhythms of daily life. Less than a month after the board's vote of confidence, Mia found herself standing in front of a crowd at a local community center. The space buzzed with quiet anticipation. Fold-out chairs formed tidy rows, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee floated in from a corner table, stacked with donuts and pastries. She couldn't quite believe she was here. On the makeshift stage behind her was a simple banner reading, "Building Bridges, Mental Health, Community, and Corporate Leadership." The event was a joint effort between Tasting & Co., Hayes Investments, and several non-profits. Emily and Ray were seated in the front row, smiling encouragingly. Asher stood off to one side with his PR manager, discreetly flipping through papers. Mia took a steadying breath. This was her first time speaking so publicly about her experiences. She glanced at Asher, who offered a tiny nod of reassurance. Facing the small crowd, she cleared her throat and began, "Thank you for coming. I'm Mia Parker. Some of you might know me from Tasting & Co., where I work as a waitress. Others might have read articles about me and Asher Hayes regarding our unusual friendship, or, I guess, relationship, that started in a very humble setting." She paused, scanning the attendees. They included mental health advocates, local business owners, and a few curious community members. Her heart thudded, but she pressed on. "I never expected a simple note, 'Are you okay?' to have such a profound impact, but it did." It started conversations about isolation, about personal struggles hiding beneath professional success. Tonight, I want to share what I've learned, that empathy has power, whether you're a CEO or a server. Genuine concern breaks down barriers more effectively than judgment or assumptions. A ripple of soft applause followed, giving her the courage to continue. She discussed the swirling gossip that initially threatened to overshadow their connection, and how the unwavering support of her co-workers and mentors, like Mrs. Jane Griffin, helped her keep perspective. She even touched on her dream of studying psychology, how the challenges and controversies had galvanized her to pursue that path more seriously. Then she introduced Asher, who joined her at the podium, looking both confident and uncharacteristically relaxed. He spoke about his journey from a results-driven, distant leader to someone who realized the value of vulnerability and human connection. He referenced the new wellness programs at Hayes Investments and the positive effects they were already having on employee satisfaction. "The corporate world thrives on innovation," he said, "and empathy might be the greatest innovation we've overlooked." Together, they fielded questions from the audience. One local business owner asked how to replicate the success of Asher's approach without sacrificing profits. Asher explained with clear-eyed conviction that investing in people yields stronger loyalty and better performance in the long run. Another attendee, a college student, asked Mia how she managed to keep going when so many doubted her. Mia's cheeks flushed. "I leaned on the people who believed in me," she answered honestly. When enough people tell you your dream is valid, when you see tangible change from a small act of kindness, you start trusting your own intuition more. And sometimes that little spark of belief is all you need to keep moving forward. By the session's end, the crowd offered a standing ovation. The applause wasn't thunderous, as it was a relatively small group, but the sincerity in it caused a lump to form in Mia's throat. She locked eyes with Asher, who beamed back, looking every bit like a man unburdened by the cold facade he once wore so diligently. Afterwards, people mingled, approaching them with personal stories of workplace woes or silent struggles. Mia found herself offering hugs and words of encouragement, while Asher exchanged business cards and set up future meetings to collaborate on new community outreach programs. Amid the hum of hopeful conversation, Mia realized how far they'd come. They weren't just surviving media storms and board pressures. They were using their experiences to help others navigate their own hidden battles. When the center finally cleared out, she and Asher stood alone near the now empty chairs. "Look at what we started," he said, voice tinged with wonder. Mia slid her hand into his. "I know," she replied softly. "And we're only beginning." A crisp breeze drifted through Boston Common as Mia and Asher strolled side by side, leaves crunching softly underfoot. The park glowed with the colors of late autumn, burnt oranges, deep reds, and golden yellows forming a tapestry above the winding paths. The sun was bright, but the air held a chill, prompting both to bury their hands into coat pockets between gentle touches and entwined fingers. They were here to unwind after the whirlwind of recent weeks, board decisions, public speaking engagements, and the constant dance of balancing their separate roles. Passing a pond where ducks congregated, Mia noticed an older couple seated on a bench, leaning into each other as they fed breadcrumbs to the birds. She felt a pang of sweet recognition at their serene companionship, recalling the photo she once saw in an art gallery of two elderly people sharing a quiet coffee. The simple, authentic closeness spoke volumes. "Hey," Asher said, pausing near a cluster of maples. "You seem lost in thought." Mia smiled, turning to him. "Just reflecting on how much has changed. I used to dream of studying psychology, but never believed it could be more than a fantasy. Now, I've enrolled in a part-time program starting next semester. And I look at you, leading Hayes Investments not just with spreadsheets, but with heart." He let out a light laugh, the warmth in his gaze evident. "Sometimes I barely recognize my own life. I never imagined I'd be endorsing flexible schedules and mental health breaks for my employees. Yet here we are, and the company's thriving. Feels like a new chapter for both of us." She rested her back against one of the tall maples, inhaling the fresh autumn air. "It's funny," she mused. "Our worlds were so different. I thought you were a distant, unreachable figure when you came to tasting and co. Now I can't picture my life without you in it." He moved closer, gently brushing a stray hair from her cheek. "The day you wrote that note asking if I was okay, it shook me. I was forced to confront my own isolation. I've spent years maintaining this image of the successful, stoic CEO, but that image was wearing thin." Her eyes glistened with emotion. "I'm glad you let me see the person beneath all that. And thank you for seeing me too, the one who wanted to be more than a waitress, but doubted she had the right." He leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. "You have every right to follow your dreams. And you're well on your way." A pause drifted between them, comfortable in its quietness. The distant laughter of children chasing each other on the grass brought a sense of grounding to the moment. They continued walking, eventually finding an unoccupied bench beneath a grand old oak. As they sat, Mia thought about everything they'd endured: the scrutiny, the board's skepticism, the personal doubts. Each challenge had felt immense at the time, yet looking back, she saw how each trial led them to deeper understanding of themselves and each other. "I used to believe fairy tales were unrealistic," she said, watching a group of friends tossing a frisbee nearby. "But now I'm starting to see that real-life stories can have their own kind of magic. Not because everything is perfect, but because people can grow together, face struggles, and come out stronger." Asher's hand found hers on the bench. "That's the best kind of story, one that acknowledges the hard parts, but still chooses connection." A contented sigh slipped from his lips. "So what happens next?" Mia looked up at him, a soft sparkle in her eyes. "We keep writing the story, day by day. Maybe I'll be juggling college assignments while you finalize corporate policies. We'll still have disagreements or face new hurdles, but we'll navigate them together." He squeezed her hand in agreement, the simple gesture brimming with promise. The park around them felt momentarily hushed, as though holding its breath in gratitude for the quiet triumph of honest hearts finding each other. And so, with a gentle hush of leaves overhead and the city's bustle at the edges, they lingered on that bench, forging a life defined not by status or scandal, but by the authenticity of two people who dared to ask the simplest of questions and discovered a world of possibilities in the answer. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.